once you depend on a drug and then you don't have it, you're going to experience a lot of withdrawal.
Yeah. It's a kind of addiction, right?
Exactly. And it's the same with an agricultural system. Once it is high input dependent and that input is taken away, then it will suffer. So there have to be other practices that you incorporate to help your system cope.
Right.
And there's going to be a buffer of some years that you're going to really witness what the effects of changing your system are. And it's so important to be able to have a support system to do this, whether it's a cooperative, whether it's a trusty buyer that you know it's going to support you.
We have some exciting new changes coming to Map It Forward in 2026 to support the rapid growth we're experiencing around the world. After seeing the impact this podcast has had on businesses and professionals in the coffee industry who have access to it in English, we've decided that we'll be working hard to make it available in other languages that encompass our amazing and diverse industry. To fund that growth, for the very first time in a very long time, we'll be inviting advertisers onto the Global Podcast and the Map It Forward Middle East podcast. So if you're a small to medium-sized company and looking for B2B advertising opportunities in the coffee industry, either to our global audience or specifically to the Middle East audience, and you believe that our values are aligned, please send us an email at support@mapitforward.org or DM us on social media and we can start a conversation today. Check the show notes for links. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 2 of a 5-part series with the first time in a very long time that we've had 3 guests on the podcast. We have Maddie, Lucie, and Gabi joining us to discuss what success looks like for resilient coffee farming. This is not a series just for coffee farmers. This is a series that is important for anybody in the coffee ecosystem, because the game is changing. And if you're looking at future-proofing your supply chain, you need to understand this stuff. So please, if you're thinking, oh, well, this is about coffee farming, I can go to another series, go ahead, but you're missing out on a whole bunch of important information. Now, guys, in this episode, we're talking about the transition from conventional farming to more resilient coffee farming. And one thing where I kind of wanted to start this conversation is when I hear about all of the things that people are talking about, when Felipe or when Angela Barrero, they're talking about discovering a lot of the practices that are happening around regenerative ag and agroforestry, it doesn't really sound like we're inventing new stuff. It sounds like as we go from conventional farming to resilient farming, we are going back to old farming practices. Am I seeing that wrong? Use your words, guys.
Sorry.
They're all shaking their head like it might fall off, but none of them are talking. Use your words. Go ahead.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. It's about reconnecting with the land and reconnecting with understanding and listening to what is needed in our systems, which entails us returning to and bringing back a lot of practices that existed in agriculture and in coffee production before we expanded into large-scale monocrop full sun coffee. But it's now looking at that, but bringing in the innovation from science and with a deeper understanding of why these things work and how to make them more efficient, more accessible.
So it's old school coffee farming 2.0. in the sense that we're going to bring in a lot of the stuff similar to what you guys are studying and finding out how do we connect some of the perhaps things that we've learnt from conventional farming that take us back to what proper traditional farming is, old school farming, and reinventing it so that we can come up with something that is the new way of farming. Correct?
Yeah, maybe just making it, still, I guess, a little bit easier for farmers. Like, of course, a lot of these practices, part of the reason why farmers understand their field so well is that they're in their field and it's really good. But we can use these old practices that have been used for a long time but then also make it adaptable. So maybe you can use it with mechanization or other types of technology that make it so, yeah, farmers can have a little bit more free time in their day, but also really care about biodiversity and giving back to nature and climate mitigation.
Go ahead, Lucie.
And also, we've advanced so far in coffee science. We've got genetics, we've got breeding, we have system design, and it's about taking all these aspects, everything we know, putting it together to make the most resilient system. Yeah.
So go ahead, Gabi.
Just the key to encourage this transition this transition to more regenerative is to work with the farmers' realities. And this is a key pillar in our project, is to understand what is the farmer's context, what are their resources, why are they making the choices they are making, and based on what they're doing, how can they start a transition?
Right.
So each farmer is different. Each farmer has a different situation, but they are measured on their own baseline. So there is no general baseline of every farmer in this region needs to do this. It's understanding what the farmer is doing, create their own baseline, and then they can start a transition.
Go ahead, Maddie.
Yeah, just to bounce off what Gabi was saying, really considering the farmer's reality is important, because I think with resilient and regenerative agriculture, a lot of people have the perception that, oh, I can't do that because it's too much work or it's a lot of work. And every type of agriculture, of course, it's a lot of really hard work. But there's ways to do it in which we can adapt to the farmer's reality, where it's not going to make it impossible. You can have a resilient system that eventually works really well. It's not like a daily battle.
Go ahead.
Just to add quickly, there are many things or many possibilities that support this. Like we also saw, for example, the power of cooperatives to help farmers do this transition. So it's not like farmers are entering alone this journey, but there are other ways to support this.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was building. This is building towards this concept of why this podcast we're talking about today, about how maybe industry can support the farmers and how farmers and industry can communicate with each other. It's that if there are these practices that we're going to do and we're going to implement to become more resilient, to become more regenerative, how can we support the farmers in doing that? Is it financial, through resources, through communities and cooperatives, through resource sharing? These are really important conversations to know, okay, if I want my coffee to be agroforestry, organic, resilient, nature friendly, if I want to support my farmer move from his or her baseline to this really beautiful, complex system, and we see them implementing all these practices, and we're going to speak more about what these practices could be. Like, what support do they need to do that, and how can we engage with that?
And Gabi, what are some of these practices? The transition from conventional through to resilient farming.
So this was a very interesting part of our project. We don't approach the farmer.
Bring the microphone to your mouth a bit.
Yeah. So what was very interesting, and what I mean with working with the farmers' realities, is that we weren't approaching the farmers in a way that it was, tell me what conventional practices you use and tell me what are the regenerative practices you use. It was just, what are your management practices? And based on what they tell us, what was their management in the past year, we can start categorizing these practices. So, for example, something that we saw in Brazil that was very interesting was the use of effective microorganisms. So
tell people what that means.
Yes, so this is the use of special types of microorganisms that help fight different pests and diseases. Fungi improve the immune system, and there were different modalities of this. they're already commercial products that farmers were buying and then multiplying in their own farm. And then there were other farmers that were going into their native forest nearby and trapping them in traps and then multiplying them. So this was very interesting to see. And it was also very nice to share this to the visitors when the buyers were visiting FAF and doing an origin trip, that we were able to talk about these type of management practices that are very different, very innovative. And I feel that just by starting these conversations with them, it just starts getting a bit more recognition and just increasing the value of the coffee they're buying. Maybe not monetary, but just more recognition of the practices that the farmers are using.
Because a practice like this, not only is it building the immune system of the coffee tree, but it's also restoring soil health and the health of that entire plot and the wider farm in general, if we're like starting to bring in more native, more natural microorganisms. And like soil is really fundamental to regenerative farming and to resiliency. And so we were observing so many really amazing practices that were focusing on soil health and soil organic matter.
You know, and for people who remember when Murilo Betterello came on the podcast and came to the Regenerative Ag Workshop, they would have heard Murilo and Felipe talk about burying rice in the forest and collecting the rainbow of microbiology on that rice. And the microbes, they would then take it back and put them in the biofabricas. This is what we're talking about, guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So the place I want to take this conversation now is this idea of, we've got 12.5 million coffee producers around the world, and the majority of them are smallholder farmers, right? Excuse me. They're not all big, massive farmers in Brazil, and even the majority of farmers in Brazil are smallholder farmers. So taking on a project like transitioning your farm from conventional to more resilient farming practices, regenerative, all the way through to agroforestry, can be either rather intimidating, or they want to do it, don't know how to do it, or they've never even considered that it was an option, right? So I imagine that there are people at different parts of the process. How do people start getting a gateway into resilient farming? Go ahead, Lucie.
I think what I just said before about soil and soil organic matter, that is truly the gateway.
Yeah, nice.
And so one of the first practices that's so simple is just covering your soil. We don't want bare soil. We spoke in the last episode about rain washing the soil top layer away, about nutrient flow, like having a cover crop in between the coffee and being comfortable with seeing your coffee crop being involved with many other crops is a really helpful way to start this transition. And we saw so many different types. If it's like bracket grass, some farmers were using the natural weeds that were there because they have different rooting depths. And then other farmers are coming in with like a food crop, which I think is really exciting, especially with smallholder farms. Like, what can we grow in between the coffee that is going to sustain me, whether I'm a subsistence farmer or whether I need this for my own household nutrition? Or is this going to be another crop that I can process to add value to? Or is this a crop that I can mulch and add more nutrients into the ground?
I think just adding on what Lucie said, an important factor influencing this decision making.
Anybody's watching me do this to my mouth. It was not me eating something. Anyway, go ahead.
That's something influencing the decision making processes is really scale, and it bounces back to what you just said of intimidating. It can be intimidating even for a very big farmer, because they're all about scale. They just produce in quantity, and
it's a factory.
It's a factory, exactly. And then for the smallholder farmer, it can be the resources that are limiting, because there's not a lot of resources to start something else.
Right.
So again, is looking at what are these practices, and based on the situation of each farmer, how can they start. In a very big producer, we were thinking they can start with a very small plot, just experimenting.
Right.
Like we worked with a farmer who they have 200 hectares of coffee and only a small like agroforestry coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been managing it conventionally, but at the same time, now through our research, they're motivated to try it organic. And it will not change their other business, because they will still keep doing what they're doing, but just with this small plot, they will explore something else.
Right.
And for us, just to see this is very inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
to know that a transition doesn't mean it's not drastic. It's just a start.
Yeah. And I think from this back to the question about resources for the smaller farmers, there's so many alternative ways to approach this. Like we once went to a seed swap event, which I just thought was super powerful, because farmers in this community, it came together to swap seeds that they've been growing, that's been working well for them. And so community and collaboration is hugely important, and creating networks, farmer networks, are like the most important thing in these things, because it's support, it's inspiration, it's guidance. And like, yeah, swapping seeds that are known to be good with coffee, swapping a knowledge, and then creating structures where these can happen, like helps tackle that fear and also that resource dependency or resource insecurity.
Something that's very interesting there is that oftentimes people want to do things and they don't know how to get started because they're so intimidated, as I was saying, by the path that's ahead of them. If you are a coffee buyer or a roaster, I would encourage you to consider reaching out to your current partners and starting the conversation around resilient coffee farming, and starting to get an idea how many of your partners actually have this on their radar. Because guys, how many people do you think, like, that's a ridiculous question, I'm not going to ask that, but is this something that is widespread and understood across farming communities? Go ahead, Lucie.
I was going to come in to answer that question. Yeah. Like when we arrived to Brazil, and I think not just Brazil, but worldwide, the word regenerative is known, and it's become a buzzword in coffee farming.
Yeah.
But it's a buzzword, but what do people experience it as, or what do people fully understand it as, has very different contexts, very different understandings. Yeah.
Right. And so I guess being proactive with your farming partners and starting that conversation and perhaps putting together a plan and saying, okay, like we want to figure out how to make sure that your farming enables you to have this farm for the next, not just 5 or 10 years or 20 years, but how do we have this so that you can pass it on to more generations and it's a profitable business? So, you know, for me as somebody who cares about people running businesses that are based on responsible pricing, responsible businesses with responsible pricing models, that's what I aspire to help people create. My affinity for regenerative farming is that it absolutely targets that idea, responsible businesses with responsible pricing models, because what it does is it enables multiple revenue streams, not just coffee. It restores balance into the ecosystem, and it really means that you have to be very deeply involved in all the elements of the ecosystem that you're operating in, not just on the ground and in nature, but now you have to be really responsible with the economics of what's going on around that ecosystem. And so I think it's a really great approach that forces all of us, it really forces all of us in this supply chain to start really caring about how we're engaging, because none of us are getting out of this by continuing to follow the conventional way of doing things. Am I understanding that right, ladies?
Yeah,
again,
I
they're
would
nodding.
Say so.
Like, go ahead, Maddie.
Yeah, I would say so. Like, even if you're, a roaster who's skeptical of climate change, I mean, it's happening whether you believe it in or not. And we're seeing droughts, we're seeing frost. Those are real things that are happening. So talking with farmers and just saying, hey, what do you think about this? Because I think what we saw, as the girls had said, yeah, a lot of people have heard the word regenerative and they're curious. They're just maybe not sure how to get started, or yeah, there's monetary barriers in order to put it in place. I mean, changing your system does unfortunately cost money, even just for trees. So seeing a way in which you can support people while they make that transition, because maybe it means a small drop in productivity at the beginning, right?
Right.
And discussing that reality in your partnership and having long-lasting partnerships while people make that transition. I think that'll be really important.
And investment, right? Like, this is not something that's going to be, and I guess that's an important part of this conversation, is that when we look at the transition from conventional farming to resilient coffee farming, people think, well, because I need less inputs, it's going to be cheaper. Go, whoever wants to pick that one up. I could see you, Lucie, going, nah.
I mean, because we have to have a complete mindset change. We can't approach it with the mindset of monoculture and the mindset of productivity and the mindset of X inputs equals X outputs. It's once you start to complexify, once you start to diversify the system, your mindset has to diversify as well. And so it's ridiculous for that statement of, oh, if I use less inputs, it's going to be cheaper. Because no, you're going to have to come in, you might be using less chemical inputs, but you're going to have more labor inputs then. We're going to have to start manual weeding or manual pruning of these trees, or we're going to have to battle a broca infestation without being able to use the standard chemicals, or we're going to have to think outside the box and come in with effective microorganisms. And so it's complex. You're complexifying your system, you're diversifying what you're doing. And so in that case, we have to think differently about how we expect the results to be.
Go ahead, Gabi.
Just adding to this, transitioning is always like, imagine being a drug user. Once you depend on a drug and then you don't have it, you're going to experience a lot of withdrawal.
Yeah. It's a kind of addiction, right?
Exactly. And it's the same with an agricultural system. Once it is high input dependent and that input is taken away, then it will suffer. So there have to be other practices that you incorporate to help your system cope.
Right.
And there's going to be a buffer of some years that you're going to really witness what the effects of changing your system are. And it's so important to be able to have a support system to do this, whether it's a cooperative, whether it's a trusty buyer that it's going to support you, whether it's another network or something. But these relationships and this community building is key in a transition towards regenerative practices.
Amazing. So in the next episode, folks, we're going to talk about the challenges that farmers are facing. So with regards to this, undergoing this transition. So join us for the third episode of this series. Peace, love and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. This episode is part of a 5-part series produced by Mapper Forward. Check the full playlist and guest details in the show notes, as well as how you can support our work in the coffee industry. Become a premium YouTube subscriber, explore our Patreon and any brands we've partnered with to bring you this podcast. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. It really does help us grow our audience.